Tim Collins with Cullman today. I'm at the Elks Lodge with Alabama Senate Majority Leader Greg Reed. Senator, thanks for coming to Cullman today.
Listen, man, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. Appreciated the invitation to come and speak to some good Republicans at the Elks Lodge today. We had a great time, good breakfast. So we talked about a lot of topics, and glad to visit with you.
Well, you got a couple of tough questions. Let's start with the first one. You guys passed a Senate resolution on the budget. Governor vetoed it. It's back to you. Where's that going to end up?
Well, we're talking about the general fund budget. We've got some challenges there, of which we do from year to year. One of those issues is associated with Medicaid. As many folks would recognize, and something I've worked on for a number of years, is trying to associate with some reforms in Medicaid to help move the cost curve down in what it costs the state of Alabama related to operating our Medicaid program. We had some challenges with that last year. We made some changes that allowed us to move through last year's budget. This year we're back to a question where we still have some of those same concerns. We've had some increase in participation in Medicaid. Again, Alabama does not control who gets into the Medicaid program. It's controlled based on criteria from the federal government in that they're providing about 70% of the resource for that program. But what we're facing is a budget that was passed $85 million short on Medicaid. Therefore, the budget was short. Went to the governor's vetoed it. I imagine that the legislature will override the governor because at the moment we do not have a definitive answer for that additional $85 million. I don't think there's a real appetite for any additional taxes in Montgomery or taking any money from the education budget, of which for the first time we've got a little bit of extra resource there. I don't see that as being an option. So we're going to have to continue to look for what the answers are going to be, and it could be, as has been alluded to earlier, that there could be a special session called later in the summer for us to refocus on how we're going to come up with these additional resources for Medicaid.
Well, Senator, it sounds like right now it's a little bit of a tennis ball. You pass it, the governor vetoes it, back and forth. How does a special session ultimately resolve it with that scenario?
Well, I think what we saw from last year, no one likes a special session. Many of the members do not like spending additional time in that kind of a setting, but it does allow us to focus on just one topic. And with this, I think the focus would be on Medicaid. You know, with the reforms that we've had that I sponsored back in 2013, you've had some great feedback from the federal government in ways to bend the cost curve down on Medicaid. They're going to give us some significant resources, $700 million over the next 5 years, if we can continue to move our basic program forward. Our challenge, again, is coming up with the basic number of $85 million that we need because of the additional folks that have gone into the program. I think a special session just allows all the stakeholders, including the legislature, to focus on what are going to be the best answers to try and fix that problem, put everybody in the room, and come up with an answer.
Makes sense. Let me try to bring it over to Cullman County and be local for a minute. Probably the biggest issue politically in this county is roads and the state of the roads. I know there's a 6-cent gas tax in the works somewhere in the legislature. What's the thought on that? Will it help county roads not only here but in your district and throughout the state?
Well, certainly roads and highways are a big issue. They're a big issue in the 5 counties that I represent. They're a big issue for my colleagues that represent here in Cullman County. We've looked at a couple of topics. There is a gas tax that's floating around in the legislature. It's had several different versions, but one of the things that came prior to that was if in fact there are additional dollars for roads and bridges in Alabama, then the idea that the distribution of those dollars are going to be set up to where counties get more of the money. And that legislation was a big debate in the Senate. I was involved in the negotiation on that particular legislation. It's now passed, and the good news is if we have additional revenues, counties and cities in areas across our state are going to get more of the resource. The question still becomes, are the people of Alabama going to be interested in paying an additional, 5 or 6 cents a gallon for more roads and bridges and improvements to where they drive their vehicles and their business transportation? That's going to be a real question. I think there's issues currently on members that support a gas tax, others that do not. I think it's been moderated in several ways to try and get more support, but it'll be up to communities, counties, municipalities, leaders in local communities that would be able to let their legislators know we really need additional revenue in our cities and counties. And if that's the requirements, then the legislature will be facing trying to make the decision on what they're going to do. No one wants to pay more taxes. No one wants to pay more in gasoline tax. But it's a trade-off. As cars continue to be added to the roadways and we wind up with miles to the gallon are higher and higher, so we're buying less gasoline per gallon, you wind up with those resources at the state level go down, and unless we make some modification, we're going to continue to have less money, not more money, for roads and bridges in our communities. So the question is going to be up to the people to decide, is that really what we want the legislature to do, recognizing no one wants to pay more, but at the same time, for so many reasons, have an additional resource for roads and bridges is an important thing for Alabama.
Sounds like a complex, long-term problem, and sounds like you guys are working in the middle of it.
You got it.
Senator, thanks so much for coming to Cullman. Great talking with you.
Listen, my privilege. Thanks always.